We are now live. Good morning and welcome to Seinfeld. This morning's episode will focus on the Frogger. So where does the group want to start?
It was interesting. I don't know the characters' names that well, but I thought it was interesting how much the older character was like obsessed with the machine and trying to save the score. Like he really tied his self-worth to the score.
We say the score, what do you mean?
It's like an accessible arcade game, and he was very like he wanted to buy the machine and bring it back. He really cared, and I guess he tied part of his identity to having the house.
All right, so the focus of discussion is on George.
Mhm.
And certainly taken from the title of the episode, his obsession with Frogger. Now, way before your guys' time, but that used to be a thing. And getting the high score was also a big deal, especially when it was in public, right? That stayed up there. Given all that, I think, again, with that nostalgia, there's a significant clinical pearl here. All right. I do not think, well, actually, this does come up in exams, shelf exams sometimes, but it presents in clinical practice nearly all the time. And that is in psychiatry, when an individual presents to you, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, or other, and they provide their chief complaint, chief concern, I want you to be of the frame of mind that what they are conveying to you is completely normal. Right? Even when it's not, doesn't matter. This exercise is for you, the clinician. And it's one way over time, certainly, to develop unconditional positive regard and really make the encounter, the clinical encounter, patient-centric. That's what you're doing here. And that goes a long way towards building rapport. When the individual provides you evidence that this is not normal behavior, right? The behavior is outside the context of a culturally sanctioned norm, i.e. abnormal, then you move to step two. And here's the caveat, right? You're going to move to step two nearly all the time. And there's going to be a temptation, especially anyone here who's pursuing psychiatry, to say, why am I wasting my time with step one? Let's get right to step two. Let's really talk about why you're here today. Be careful with that. Not that you'll be wrong, because you'll be right like 99.9% of the time. Where that derails is that you'll never develop the neurobiology to make things patient-centric. You're the one that'll have the shortcoming 10, 20 years down the road as a clinician, right? So with that in mind, when we look at George's behavior, you know what? Especially someone who grew up in the 80s, it's completely normal. That's where we start. Now, what evidence does George provide us to suggest that we probably should move off step one and enter into the second step of our case formulation and identifying his behavior, some of his behaviors as abnormal? I think you mentioned the word.
Obsession.
Yeah. So there are normal thoughts. Hopefully everybody in this room is having them right now. And this is getting to the aspects of the mental status exam, right? The routine MSC, where those domains of A, B, C, stamp liquor, T is thought, right? Thought can be broken down to the thought content and thought process. I think for all intents and purposes in reviewing and learning the MSC, thought process should be kicked out. Think of thought process, pardon the pun, as speech, right? Everything that we look into, investigate, and then report as part of thought process can be reported under speech. That's the S in ABC stamp liquor. If you do that, then it not only does it simplify things for you, but then when you begin to think, again, pun intended there, about T for thought, it's thought content only, right? And here we begin to talk about things such as suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts or ideation, and then other themes. Those themes include the overvalued idea, right? By definition, the overvalued idea, maybe individuals outside of this room would call it a superstition, are largely defined as mild and operationalized as not causing clinically significant distress or impairment in functioning. right? So in psychiatry, we don't deal with that much, right? Only to identify that they're normal, which again is the first step in saying hello to a patient. When we move off that first step, we begin to look at a number of other types of thoughts, another types of deficits of thought content, but beyond or more severe than the overvalued idea. And it starts with the obsession. It may also include preoccupations and even ruminations. For all intents and purposes, those terms are interchangeable. For today, anyway, interchangeable, right? That's where George is. The obsession slash preoccupation slash rumination are all considered to be intermediate in severity. They are more severe than the overvalued idea, as hallmarked by they're actually resulting in clinically significant distress or impairment in functioning, but they're not as severe as the most severe form of deficit, which is the what? What happens when individuals, in George's case, obsession evolves and becomes more severe? What do we usually label it? That's the disorder, yes.
Not compulsion.
Now that's a behavior, not a thought.
Okay. Fixation.
I heard it.
It's a delusion.
Delusion. A delusion. And what differentiates the delusion from everything else is that delusions are fixed and rigid, right? So similar to the obsession, delusions may not be reality based. They may or may not be, right? Actually, let's say they're not. But what differentiates from the intermediate forms of deficit is that it is fixed. That is, the individual has no insight, so that when they discuss their thoughts, they can't divorce from reality, and you're providing information to the contrary results in no change in where they are, what they think, right? Given all that now as a very ultra brief primer on deficits of thought content, do you still want to use the word obsession when, again, either works? I mean, again, I'm going to say both are right because they're interchangeable, but not delusion and not overvalued idea. So you are talking about an intermediate. Only when we get to this part of the discussion can we then take the next step and discuss why. What's the root cause, and maybe obsessive compulsive disorder is actually going to be the single best answer. Okay, a little bit beyond the scope of our discussion this morning, but very important to make sure that we tie in what you've learned regarding the MSC to this particular episode and to what you observed. All right. One more quick question. Do we see any compulsive acts to undo the anxiety caused by these preoccupations slash obsessions? It could be mental acts, they could be physical acts like cleaning, counting. Okay, everybody knows what I'm getting at, right? So I'm going to take the radio silence and the pause as a no. I tend to agree. Does that allow you then to rule out OCD as a possible diagnosis? Why or why not? You can't see it on camera here, but everybody's shaking their head no.
You saying that, like going back to the question that you asked before, if there were any behaviors to overcome the obsession?
We find George counting,
Yeah.
cleaning, washing his hands.
No. So then we can't rule it out. Is it possible because, well, I was thinking more along the lines of like maybe they don't think they have to overcome it, so there are any compensatory behaviors.
And that could be true. Well, we're assuming that these thoughts are clinically significant in as much as they do impair functioning in some way. So that's still for discussion, but assuming they do, further workup and investigation of obsessive compulsive disorder usually has the clinician investigate whether or not there are any compensatory acts, i.e. compulsions. The answer is no, you're all right. And that's because individuals with OCD may be diagnosed as such with either obsessions or compulsions or both. Up to 20% of individuals with OCD have obsessions only. So the absence of compulsions does not allow us to rule out when we think that he has clinically significant obsessive thoughts.
Would you be able to like observe all of the compulsions, or would that be something that you did?
Dig into. I mean, you might be fortunate enough to see them in your office. Sometimes individuals, when they enter the door, have to knock a certain amount of times or have a ritual before entering the door. Most clinicians aren't that fortunate to observe them, those types of behaviors in vivo.
I guess I was more so asking, kind of stuff that we're watching this person operate in a real world day. So, like, could there be compulsions that they might have that are not like visible to like the human eye that understand what's going on in the brain?
100%. Yeah, yep. And I think your point was actually picked up and appreciated by the American Psychiatric Association in 2013 with the latest revision of the DSM, where the new vocabulary or mental acts, right? So it's behaviors or mental acts. That's new to the DSM-5. So yes. Any other observations? George Costanza.
His fixation is kind of on like a childhood event, which was his score was from childhood. It wasn't like a recent thing. And it almost feels like he's reverted back to a childhood stage.
Yeah, with subsequent episodes, I think your observation will be supported. Fixated. And then with anxiety, individuals years later can regress back to that state or stage of fixation, right? Is there anything in this 20 plus minutes that suggests that George was meeting with some anxiety that results in his regression? I mean, people could regress for any reason at all. Usually we like to see some moment, some stressor that results in their regression. Anything there? What else is going on with George in this episode other than the frog or anything?
The murder.
What?
They're a murderer. But that wasn't really his issue.
Right, yeah, it wasn't his. Even if not observable in this episode per se, it's something we would actually ask George if he were sitting with us today as a patient. Anything going on today that we may not necessarily frame it as to why you regressed, probably not, but we definitely probe here. Other characters, other scenes you'd like to discuss, the Frogger. Oh, by the way, before hold that thought, does, again, as the title kind of suggests, anything else to review here that loophole or door open that we can briefly discuss? What is internet gaming disorder? I know that that Frogger is not internet gaming, but then again, Larry David's a bit ahead of his time here. Internet gaming disorder is a new condition that warrants further study that focuses on individuals that engage in internet gaming to the level of an addiction, right? So in 2013, the American Psychiatric Association reorganized the substance use chapter of the DSM, titled it the addiction disorders chapter. And then within that chapter, there are two parts: substance related and non-substance related. So now just stepping outside the DSM for a second, there are two conditions that are part of the non-substance related disorders. One is internet gaming. What is the other? Yeah, those are the two. And if you look at both criteria sets, there is significant overlap with any substance related disorder. Yeah. So is that
Just those two?
right now, just those two. Yeah. The way the APA works and the way the APA task forces work is that with each revision, they have to present and discuss, significantly discuss the evidence-based data. So while many more likely do exist, not until the research catches up with us do we then publish it.
There's not like, I'm imagining like porn addiction. Is that somewhere else in the DSM?
Not yet. My gut is that with internet gaming, you're going to probably see that expanded to other aspects of the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be expanded, and I think it might even become its own subchapter. Yeah, and that's where you're going to fit. That's where it's going to fit.
Okay.
That right now, not to go down this rabbit hole, but is very, very difficult to support. Not because it doesn't exist, but because the data just are not there. There it is horrifically underreported. So we just the APA just doesn't have the data right now to form any real diagnostic criteria that would be valid. Right, when we clinically label something, it's because we understand that there's a progression of illness and there'd be empirical treatments available. We don't label for the sake of labeling. And right now that the research just isn't there, and for I think internet porn addiction is a big reason why it's done in secret. Oh, somebody raised their hand. No, that's okay. All right, got another 5 or so minutes. Other characters in the Frogger you want to discuss?
Pink one.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I don't remember her name.
What's going on? What scene do you want to focus on?
I thought it was interesting that she, even when she understood the price and the risk in going after the kid, she still went to, she like still went to consume like the entirety of the rest of the slice. I was trying to think of that a little more, but
Yes, that's this is Elaine. All right. And again, we're watching a very small snippet of behavior, but not unlike the clinical interview. I mean, we're given a slice of time that is so brief, but the clinician inquires. All right, so there's a lot to discuss here. What's another way an individual might describe Elaine's behavior when she's eating that cake?
it's impulsive.
Impulsive? Mhm. One more biggie here. Would it be fair to say loss of control?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both back to back. I think very well described what we see in that scene. So from this point, one question we have to ask Elaine, if she were physically present here, had this happened before? Can you give me other examples as to when this happened to you? And let's say that she says yes. This is a recurrent, pervasive pattern of behavior. That's what we're looking for. So for educational purposes, let's say she endorses that. What maybe we be thinking of right now? Or further questions?
Binge eating
Yeah,
disorder.
yeah. We're right into the eating or feeding and eating disorders chapter of the DSM. So I think the two that I think you can be part of the initial assessment now that we have this information. Few others that themselves are new to the DSM-5 are probably going to be put in the back of our minds for subsequent interviews. But what are the big two that are likely to show up in your exam? Right. Right. So I think one of the teaching points for anorexia nervosa as well as bulimia nervosa, anorexia and bulimia, is that both can actually present with binge eating and purging behavior. Right. And just please be mindful of that, because people who write test questions like yours truly may actually put that in the very first sentence thinking, I got you. Right. Let me put clinically significant binge eating and purging behavior, sentence 1, and choice A is going to be bulimia, and choice D is going to be anorexia, and I got them. Right? What are you really looking for starting at sentence 2 to help differentiate one from the other and therefore select the single best answer?
BMI, and I was gonna say like compensatory behavior. Like if you eat a lot, you then starve yourself for a couple of days or go on a run for X amount of miles.
That might be for both, though.
Oh, never mind.
What was it?
Oh, I said a BMI.
Yeah. Yeah. Always start with anorexia. That is always going to be number 1 in your differential, because if they live for anorexia and they have or demonstrate every clinical criteria for every other one of the eating disorders, anorexia is still your most likely diagnosis. Everything goes through anorexia nervosa. And the hallmark quality is there is a fear of gaining weight despite being underweight. And underweight is defined by the BMI, 17.5. Right. As soon as you understand that, you are well on your way to help or assist in differentiating between anorexia, bulimia, and everything else. 3 or so minutes left. Any other observations for Elaine? Or any other characters in the Frocker you'd like to discuss? We're good? All right, we're gonna sign off then. For those following at home, sign right back onto that second link for table rounds.